All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. You may not be clapping at the end, but thank you. First of all, just to tell you about myself, I did work in computer games for about 11 years. I worked primarily as an artist to start with for about 4 or 5 years, but I was mostly interested in the writing. I wanted to write scripts, I wanted to write the games, I wanted to develop the characters and the concepts and the ideas behind them. And I managed to do that. I managed to get some work working on Fighting Force 2. We're going back, last century almost now. It was 1999. And through that tenuous link, I managed to get the gig doing Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness, which was Tomb Raider 6. So most of the stuff that I'll be talking about, and a lot of the art material that I'll be showing today is from Tomb Raider 6. But I've also included quite a bit of my own artwork to show you that I can actually draw, because it's a useful skill to have even as a writer. Before I just launch into this, can I just ask what sort of departments are represented here? What are you all?
One of those questions. Anybody here from Southport? Isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's a bit like that. Anybody here who's doing programming? Yeah, we've got programmers. That's good. I won't be able to answer many of your questions in detail because I know zilch about programming, but I have worked a lot with programmers, so I can perhaps help you in some direction. What else have we got? We've got animators. We've got some animators in here, have we? Yeah? Yeah, okay. What else?
Well, also,
just general media.
Yeah. None in media.
Media studies, right, okay. So I'm going to try and keep I will keep my information fairly simple, fairly straightforward, but the most interesting part of this will be from your questions. If there's things you want to ask me, put your hand up. And if we can't take questions in the middle, we'll certainly take them at the end. I've put this talk together. This is the first time I've done this talk, and it might be that a lot of it becomes irrelevant as I begin to gauge your response. So I'll try and gear it to what you're interested in seeing. This first panel, this is a piece of artwork I did for a website that I run. Oh, it's a blog site actually. It's for a character called Nolfin Blog, and I'll give you the links to those at the end. This is basically trying to get people to go and look at nolfblog.blogspot. It's a black and white and a colour comics blog site. Can we just go to the next one? Okay, there's somebody you may have seen. I know that the Tomb Raider games, they've been going for a long time. I think the first one came out in '96. I had nothing to do with any of those. I got brought on board in 2000. The way that happened was the franchise had been running very well and being very successful, making a lot of money, making people into millionaires, literally. And it all became very seductive and interesting and exciting, and people were dying to work on Tomb Raider 6, including myself. But I didn't manage it until 2000. As I say, I was working initially as an artist, but I made the transfer to writing and scripting because that interested me more. Being perfectly honest, I'm not a big fan of computer games, even though I worked on them for 11 years. I was more interested in it as a media for expressing my own ideas. And looking at the people here and remembering the things I've been told about you, probably it's more interesting and useful for me to tell you about your ideas and how you can develop your ideas, how you can develop a passion for what you're doing. I mean, you talk about computer games to a lot of people and they think, oh, it's game testing. You just spend all day testing games and you just eat pizza and you sleep under the table and you don't wash for weeks on end and it all gets really interesting. Yeah, that happens, but that's not all there is to it. There's so many different roles and so many different aspects. There's character animators, there's model animators, there's model builders, there's programming. All these things are very important. And what you find is that you're part of a very large machine, a very well organized machine, hopefully, and you get the product done. But if you're a tester or you're an artist or you're a programmer, yes, you'll be involved in doing your own piece of work, but it'll be completely tied in and relating to what everybody else is doing. And to be honest, there's very little freedom. The only stages at which the freedom exists is when somebody is creating the stories and the characters and the concepts that the games will depend on. So my own experience in games, these are the things I'll just go through fairly quickly using these slides. My experience, I came to it as a CG artist, so I knew about computer games. I'd done animation, I'd done traditional animation. I worked on a film called the BFG and the Duckula series many years ago at Cosgrove Hall in Manchester. I worked on those as an animator. So I learnt my animation skills in the traditional form, but I also then transferred to computer games and learned about CG animation. So I've worked as a CG artist, I've worked on scripts and concepts, concept development, which is where my personal passion is. Being asked to develop ideas and come up with ideas and create them and share them and get them made into products, that's my own personal passion. If I can do it in games, fine. If I can do it in television series, fine. If I can do it in films, fine. I don't care which way it goes. But my personal passion is concepts and concept development. Story, of course, very important. I'll do a little bit on technicalities. Practicalities, what I mean by that is how do you actually get something made? How do you convey your ideas and transfer your ideas to somebody else? And what might be some of the problems that you meet? Gaming as a career, I'll do a little bit about that. And then I'll show you a little bit of some of my personal projects. Okay, thank you. I'll go through this very quickly. These are some of the games that I'd worked on, and those 4 environments are 4 that I built for a game called Sentient that came out in 1997. The polygon count and the memory capable of running the levels at that date when I was doing it in 94, 95, 96 was very, very low. And just as an example of not being able to do what you want, I built these environments, which I don't think look all that good compared to today's environments, but I worked very hard on those, and I got them to this stage, and then the word came down that, no, you can't have them like that. You're going to have to strip out half the textures, in other words, half the colours and patterns. I know you know what textures are. You're going to strip out half the polygons because the memory just can't deal with it. So that was my introduction to computer games. Oh, I've built all these wonderful things. It looks fantastic. I'm pleased with it. It works, but when it goes into the game, the memory wasn't able to deal with it. And I was one of, 6, 7 artists who all had to do the same thing. We had to strip our models right back to like half the polygon count and half the textures. Very frustrating, but it's the reality of it. That's what was needed to be done. So I also worked on one called Lander, Formula 1 and Racing 1. Fighting Force 2, that was when I got my first writing gig. I got to do a load of dialogue for Fighting Force 2, so I was very pleased with that one. Angel of Darkness, 2003. And then while I was at Core in Derby, I also got to work on those others, Eden, Hurdy-Gurdy, Smart Bomb, Shell Shock, basically just doing dialogue, lots and lots and lots of dialogue. And then I worked for a year in a concepts development team at Derby. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I got invited along because of what I'd done on Fighting Force 2. I was asked along by the people who owned Core in Derby to say, well, we need to change the franchise. We need to bring it up to date a bit more. It's been running for 5 games now. It's been doing very, very well. But we're looking to change direction. We're beginning to repeat ourselves. So I was invited over for an interview, and they said, basically, what can you do for us? What can you do to make it different? Now, this was a typical kind of pitch that I got. We want it to be new, innovative, things that nobody's ever seen before, and yet spookily, we want it to be almost exactly the same and along the same successful lines that we've had. So it was like, well, do you want innovative and groundbreaking, or well, we want you to do both. Right, okay, well, there's a paradox going on there, but I'll see what I can do. So I gave a pitch, and I was offered the game on the spot there, and they said, when can you start? And I said, well, yesterday. So that was it. I went home, packed, and then from then on, for 5 years, I travelled to Derby every week, which is quite a journey. I live in North Wales, just outside Chester. So that was very interesting. And what we did was we had to come up with a new concept for Lara. She'd been doing all the tomb raiding and all the stuff that's represented here by the comics and the models. And of course, the film was coming out around that time as well with Angelina Jolie. That was very exciting, although we had nothing to do with that. So what we did was I got together with some artists. We decided on a new look for Lara. I say we, the artist did. I was just, pitching in my sixpence worth. And what they came up with was the sort of look that she's got here, which even now looks quite old-fashioned. Looking at the new Tomb Raider games, this looks quite old-fashioned. But compared to the Lara Croft which has existed before that, this looked very advanced at the time. I was also asked to create a brand new character that could possibly be used as a spin-off character. In other words, a character who could be taken and given a series of games on his own. And the character I created was Curtis Trent that we see there. He had all sorts of powers and he had all sorts of weapons. I wrote all the backstory. I wrote backstory for everybody. Everybody had histories going way back. You could go back and look in the pages and say, oh, he was born then, did this, and they did this. And they all come together in this story, and the story takes off. So that was very exciting. The only problem with Curtis was everybody was in agreement that this was a great character and we could really go places with Curtis. And I thought, this is good. I won't own it. Whatever work you do for a computer games company, it's entirely the company's. So you can sweat and you can bleed and you can curse and fight and get excited and depressed and elated, and you put all your work into this stuff, and it's very satisfying. And if you get paid well, it's even more satisfying. And for this gig, I was paid extremely well. But you don't own any of the material. Anything that you do when you're working for a games company, it's theirs. Even if you go home at night and you work on stuff of your own while you're working for a games company, the company could have a claim on that stuff because you're in the contract. Most of the contracts that you get, whether as a tester, as a programmer, as an artist, as an editor, anything at all, musician, whatever, there'll usually be a clause in there which says anything that you work on in this time is the company's. So it's an interesting point to bear in mind. It's a little bit of constriction on what you might be doing. So of course what everybody in the company was doing was working on little projects of their own that they told nobody about. And it went on. People were working on their own projects. I'll say at the very end as well, it's very important to have your own projects. If you've got an idea and you've got a passion for it and you believe in it and you want to see it made into something, do it. Don't listen to anybody else's advice. Do it. Doesn't matter whether it's comics, graphic novels, film, radio. Do it. Follow it up. If you can work with other people, do it. That's brilliant. And then, I'll talk about this later, you come to the point where you might want to present it to somebody and say, this is what we've got. Can you help us? So I'll deal with that in a bit. So there we are. We had Lara, we had Curtis. Okay, next one, please. Right, so this is Lara, and this is one of the characters I created for the game called Eckhart. He's the baddie. You wouldn't guess, would you, looking at him like that? He's the baddie, and he's lived for hundreds of years. He's an alchemist. He's able to preserve his own life, and so on. There's this whole backstory. I've already said how I got into games. I'll tell a little bit more about that at this stage. I did work as an animator at Cosgrove Hall, I've said that. I used to work as a concepts designer and artist, developing concepts and ideas for other projects, most of which ever got made. They just didn't get made. I used to work for Central Television in London when I was living down in London. I worked on about 8 projects for them, including cartoon series, science fiction films, all sorts of stuff, loads and loads of stuff. One did get made. It was a thing called The Ink Thief, which was for ITV. That did get made, and unfortunately on that one, I got to design a lot of the characters. It was based on somebody else's idea, but I got to develop a lot of the characters. And I also got to run the art department team at Elstree Studios for 8 weeks while we were shooting it there. So that came out in about 2004. That was the one project in 3 years that I worked on that got made. So that's fairly typical of the kind of proportion of things that get to see the light of day, that get made and get to see the light of day. And you've just got to learn to live with that level of disappointment, unless you're much better than I am and you get them all made, in which case I hate you. But that would be what everybody would be aiming for. Previous experience, I've already done that. Relative skill sets, yes. Drawing, writing, yeah, I've done that. training. Now, when I was picked up, I had a friend who was in a heavy metal rock band called Venom, and we met at Elstree Studios, and he said, "Oh, I've got this great idea for a game. Can you do some artwork?" And I said, yeah, I can do some artwork. We knew each other quite well at that time, so he did all the music, I did all the images. I knew nothing about games at that point, and he and I went to, where did we go? To Sony. We went to Sony in London, and we said, "This is our idea for a game," and they said, "Oh, let's have a look at that." And then we got what can quite often happen. We got the runaround for about 8 weeks. We went back to different meetings with different people and had to go through the whole process again and again and again. And I got the impression the people we're speaking to weren't talking to each other, or something strange was going, something a bit underhand. So we got to the end of the 8 weeks, and I said, "Look, are you actually interested in this project?" And they said, "Well, yes, we think it's got possibilities." It was a thing called HGV, heavy goods vehicle. It was this monstrous truck that crashed through the dimensions. I mean, you know, daft idea, but yeah, kind of cool in a way. And we did a lot of work on it. And I said, "Well, what's all this hold up? Why are you going backwards and forwards all the time with these ideas? Why can't you say something a bit more determined?" He said, "Well, it's a matter of fitting projects that we've got." And I knew nothing about games. I knew with films are planned like 8 years ahead. You know, you're working on a film now, you get the post-production, everything. A film can take 3, 4, 5 years to come out, or 1 year if you've got a big budget, to 18 months. Same with games, of course. Tomb Raider itself, Angel of Darkness, took 3 years to do and bring out. So I said, "Well, why aren't we going forward with this? What's happening?" And they said, "Well, the truth is, it's just like a lot of other games that we've got coming through, in the sense that it's a good idea, but we don't know how we can use it. But what we'd like to do is train you as a CGI artist and employ you to work on the games that we're already doing." And I said, "Well, what about my partner?" And he said, "We can't use him. We've got musicians coming out of the kazoo. We've got everything that we need that he can offer us." So he and I had to talk about that. We formed a company. We dissolved the company so that I could go forward. And Tony went his route and I went my route. We keep in touch still, just about. So I was then employed to become trained as a CGI artist, which I didn't know anything about computers. I got into this all very, very late. And this was in 1994. So I went into a training program. And I learned what the day-to-day working was, which is I don't just sit down and think, "Oh, I'd like to do this today," or "I've got this great idea." Somebody comes up to me with a clipboard and they say, "Right, what you're doing today is you're making dustbins." "Well, how long am I making dustbins for?" "Well, till you've done about 300 of them," or whatever it is. Something like I'm thinking, "Oh, that's interesting." And it went on that. Eventually, I got upgraded, of course. I got to do craft. I got to do spaceships. I got to do other things. But I had to start at a slow base. Now, from the starting point that any of you who are doing this, you probably know how to build polygon models and so on. You wouldn't have to start from scratch as I did. I mean, I'm obviously not a teenager, and it took a long time to grasp what was necessary for working in computers. You'd probably pick it up quicker. But I had to go through this very rigorous training program and just get down to the graft of doing the stuff day after day after day. Eventually, not being very excited about the stuff I was doing. It just went on and on and on. I thought, this is no good. I'm an ideas person. I've got to find a way of breaking out of this and getting to the point where I can actually do some of the stuff that I'm good at, which is creating ideas and images. Okay, thank you. So when I eventually did get the Tomb Raider gig, which is actually, of all the games I've worked on, it's the only one that I am really proud of having worked on. Even though it didn't do very well, it came out before it was ready and it sank like a stone and virtually killed off the franchise. Although somebody else picked it up. I think it was Crystal Dynamics in Canada. They picked it up and they've gone on with it since, and it's done very, very well. But yeah, having the ideas, I had loads of ideas for Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness. So it was a matter of getting all these ideas down, creating appropriate material for the kind of concept. I mean, Tomb Raider had existed for, at that point, 5, 6, 7 years or something. I couldn't just come up with ideas that interested me. I had to come up with ideas that were in keeping with the world of Lara Croft. I had to take a long approach in this. I knew I was going to be in this. I was actually asked to create enough ideas for a series of 3 games. Whether we actually got to the second and third game would depend on how the first game did. So I was creating a huge amount of material. I mean, just masses. I was looking back at it the other day, and it's just folder after folder after folder, tons of material. And of that material that I created, I would say that something like 15% of it was used in the game. And even that's a lot. I mean, the amount of material, story material, background material, dialogue, all that kind of stuff that was used in the game, about 15% of what I used. But I had the pleasure of learning how to handle vast amounts of data, which I now use in my own projects. I've never spoken about my own work in public in this way before, but when I've discussed it with people, people say, well, where do you get your ideas from? And the truth is, anywhere. You can get it by looking at a newspaper report or something that happens or something on television and people say, well, that's just stealing. And I say, well, if it is, you've got to steal from the very best that you can find. Steal from everything. But in the very act of stealing other people's ideas and stealing concepts and stealing names, and you make it your own. So you get all this material. Basically, everybody who's made films or TV games, comics, books, it doesn't matter what it is, it's raw material for you to get your own ideas firing off like mad. You bring it all together in your own way, you make it your own, you go and approach somebody with it. You say, I've got this idea for a game. Fitting the cloth to fit the story. Well, I didn't do that. As I say, I did a massive amount of material, but I never had a regret for doing it because it taught me to produce material almost on an industrial scale. And you have to deal with constant changes. I told you before about we'd done these environments, all of us, for this game, and we were told, oh, that's fine, they're looking really good for that period, 94. You've got to strip out half the polygons, half the textures, half of you've got to strip it right down. Constant changes were going on with Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness right until the week before it was released, and even then it wasn't ready. And I'm telling you all these things not to kind of dispirit you, but to show you that working in any real-world situation is very demanding and very hard. It can be hard on your passion and your belief and the drive that you have to get things done. If you don't have the passion, you won't do it. If you have the passion, don't take any disappointments, don't take any setbacks. You just go for it and you keep doing it. And you keep doing it. If you're doing it in the privacy of your own bedroom or the library or in your friend's house, keep doing it. That's what I'd say. Right. Concepts development. I'll whiz through this very quickly. Team contributions to the ideas. That was another thing. I was part of a team of 3 other people who were also contributing concepts. Now, as I was lead writer and concepts head, I had to take other people's ideas, some of which were like my own. I have good ideas, I have crap ideas, I have mediocre ideas, I have ideas which are so far out of field, you'd never bring them into a game. But the important thing is to have lots of ideas. And of course other people were as well. And my job was to bring all those ideas together and somehow find a way that they could harmonize and work together. So that was one of my responsibilities. I also had to develop concepts for artifacts and objects that would be, like in a game, obviously you have some games which are more puzzle oriented than others, so you've got to develop the whole idea of how does that work, who is it who's created that artifact, how did the puzzles work together. Now I'm not very good at that at all. I have very little experience in that, and although I've worked in games for a long time, I can't do that. Puzzle creation is a task of its own. It's a very, very skilled, very good skill, very high level skill to be able to do. So if you're good at puzzles, perhaps you're a puzzle creator for games, I don't know. Working with the artists, that was easy. Working with the programmers, that was hard. Programmers and artists speak different languages. They think differently, their minds are set up to work differently, and the fact that anything ever gets done has always been a source of miracle and wonderment to me. I have the huge admiration for programmers. I just think they are geniuses in their own right. It's hard to speak to them with artistic language. And they always said, well, artists, they're just airy-fairy. And sometimes you'd get to situations where there'd be clashes, people would disapprove of each other's skill levels, and then it gets personal, and then, and that's where you have to learn to work in a team. Working with marketing, that's a whole other thing. You have all these great ideas, and people in marketing say, well, we can't do that because you know, the colour's wrong, or that won't sell in that area, or who's your target audience for this game. There's a lot of considerations to be brought into mind. Okay, thank you. Oh, these pages, by the way, these are from comics that were coming out about the time I was working on these games. Really nice artwork. I think they stank as comics, and their level of writing was poor, but I would think that because I'm a writer. But the artwork was pretty good. We've done that. Where do ideas from? Expanding ideas. Yes, getting ideas which can be large enough to incorporate lots of other people's input. But also, as I said, I was asked to write enough material for 3 stories. We used very little of it. In fact, the ideas for the first game, I'd done twice as much as we needed, and it had to be cut back again. Constantly changing ideas, 1, 2 or 3 game span. I never did write all the material for the second and third games. I've written a lot of notes and material, and it's just, I've got it. I've got it stuck away. I may use it sometime, I may not. I've gone so far from working in games and Tomb Raider now that it all seems slightly irrelevant, I have to say. And of course you have to bring the whole thing to a conclusion that suits everybody. You have to please marketing, you have to please the programmers, that they've been given enough challenges to get the characters to do the things they want, the artists, so that their work looks really great. Everybody has to be pleased, so it's a massive team effort. I'm going on a bit long, and I want to give some time for questions, so I'm going to whiz through these now. Technicalities, early stage, requirements for characters. What do you need for a character to work? A lot of questions to be asked. Wireframe and polygon count, I've mentioned some of that. Sometimes if you're doing your models and the polygon count's too high, it's just got to be stripped right back. You might even have to start from scratch again. Build your fantastic spaceship, and it's just too high. With technology and memory power as it is at the levels now, that might not be a problem. Most platforms can run very, very high polygon count models running. It's not the same problems I had. And I've got to be honest and tell you that most of my experience stopped 5, 6 years ago. I gave up working in computer games 5 or 6 years ago. So I'm talking from way back in the past now. Gameplay, color schemes and rendering, mood, historical accuracy. Oh, those are two designs I did for 2 things I did for Central Television. One at the top was a thing called Sagusa, which was a kind of Western in space. It was a good idea, actually. It just didn't get the funding. And this one below was another one that I did for, it was another space thing. Okay. Wireframe and moves. Just to show you a model there of Lara starting. That's not a pure wireframe model on the far left, of course. She's actually been made solid, but it is a wireframe model, gradually adding the colors till you end up with the finished model. The other things you've got to bear in mind as an animator, it's not just that you can get a character to move. You've got to get all the moves that the character has to blend perfectly. So the fact that Lara can move over to this table and climb on the table, that's great. You do that as an animation on its own. But she's also got to be able to get down from the table and walk and run and jump and shoot and climb and all these things. Right, so you do all these animations separately, but then they've got to morph into each other so that the game continues in a smooth run. I'm saying this because we didn't do it with Angel of Darkness. There were a lot of glitches where one of the people who owned the company went to a big marketing exhibition. This was so embarrassing for him, not for me, I wasn't there. And he was trying to get Lara, it was a demonstration model. This is how cool we are. We've got Lara, she can go up, she can climb on these tables. And she couldn't. The programming hadn't been worked out, it was still bugged. So in public, it was showing how unready the game was. Big mistake, big mistake. We began to get a lot of bad press at that point, and it continued. So, yeah, please. Yeah, 2 more, just showing you a little bit of how moves might be broken down and so on. If we just go to the next one, please. Another comics page. Unique selling point. Right, if you've got an idea and you're wanting to go to somebody, you might have a great idea, you might have some good artwork, you might have some good programming, you might have some demonstratable levels. But the key thing is, what are its unique selling points, USPs? What is it about this game that is unique, that will make somebody want to make it with you and will make somebody want to go into a shop and buy it and make you some money, hopefully lots of money. So what are the unique selling points? It's very important that you have something which is a hook that makes this game stand out from every other one. Marketing and merchandising, loads of considerations for there. I'm not even going to go through those. Right, yeah, next one, please. I'm going a little bit over time. So gaming is a career. Do you want to get into games? Not everybody in here wants to get into games, I suppose. You might just be here for the interest. But if you are wanting to get into games, what are the skill sets you've got? Are you a programmer? Are you an artist? Are you an organizer? You need to know about computer games, but if you're running a team or you're organizing how a team works and you're working out their timetables, you might have a very good mind for organizing stuff. You can get a lot of work in computer games that way. But you obviously need to know about computer games. So what are your skill sets? Personal interest and self-presentation. This is the important thing. What are your personal interests? What are you really passionate about in computer games? If you are, what are you passionate about in films or whatever it is? And if you've got that, how do you fit it to getting a job in computer games? I keep bringing it back to computer games because that's what the talk's about. But I'm saying this about anything, whether it's graphic novels or filmmaking or whatever it is. Commitment and determination. You haven't got that, walk away. It's not worth wasting your time or anybody else's. Salary, yes, you will get paid. Probably not very much to start with. When I started in 94, I think I was paid something like $13,000 a year, which I don't know whether that sounds a lot to you or not. It went up to $17,000 the next year. And I heard recently a son of a friend of mine went and got a job as a tester in a games company, and he was paid $17,000. In other words, he's being paid the same now as I was being paid 11, 12 years ago, whatever it was. I'm not very good at maths. He's getting paid the same. He likes what he's doing, but he's already finding it frustrating, and he wants to develop his own ideas. So yes, my own case, I made a lot of money out of this. It enabled me to pay my mortgage off and do lots of other things. So I was basically steamrolled, and I was left with a very, very insignificant bonus. But I'd been paid very well, so I did very well out of it. It was like a last kick in the teeth as I left the gaming world. It's not just the gaming world that does that to you, though. That can happen in any field, pretty much. Testing, is it endless loads of fun? Yeah. It can be. It can be. If you like playing games, it's the job for you. Do it. Go for it. I would say even if you like testing, see about developing your own ideas. Get some of your own ideas. Have ideas that you can go to somebody else. Get an artist friend. Get a programmer friend. To get together. If you've got a project of your own, that's where you'll make a real living at it. Nobody is ever going to stay a tester forever. You're not going to make a career out of that. And if you do, you lack ambition and you lack vision. Start where you can in the games industry, but set yourself some sights. Different types of jobs. Sound, very important. We have music playing as you come in, sets the mood and everything. Next one, please. I'm going to really skip through these now. These are all the things I've done. Early influences, comics, games. I worked as a commercial cards artist. I did comics. I've worked on film concepts, animation, mentioned that. But my game transition, I've done that. Writing in games, writing novels. I now concentrate on writing novels. I've written 3. 2 of them, I've done 2 out of a series of 6 for a massive epic story that I'm working on. I've got a top London agent, literary agent, which is very lucky. Very, very hard to get. And I'm hoping to make it big and die a millionaire. So we'll see whether that happens.
How far are you on your way to that then?
Yeah, on the way up, I have a heart attack on the steps going up. Brilliant. So I'll just go very quickly through these now, please. Next one. This is the project I'm working on at the moment called the Shadow Histories. This is some of my own artwork for this. Again, next one, please. This is another piece of artwork I've done for this blog site, for this character called Nolfin Small, who basically is a misfit, is a kind of, sort of Mr. Bean in the modern technological world. And this is an advert I've been sending out to try and get people to look. This actually is a pinch, that composition is a pinch from a very famous frame in a Dave Gibbons comic called Give Me Liberty with Martha Washington. And there's a picture of Martha who's standing on the tube, and I've just taken that composition and dropped all my characters in, completely redrawn it. But yeah, next one, please. Oh yes, and 2 on that one. Yeah, this is some of the sketches I did for this other project called Segusa. Next one, please. Yeah, another project, Travelling Light. There's Nolfin again for his blog site. Okay, next one, please. That one's from The Ink Thief, another one from Segusa. I like Segusa. I was always sad when that didn't get anywhere. It was a really good project. Next one, please. So these are the contact details. At the moment, I have a website called murtischofield.com. At the moment, that's not working. So if you want to have a look at all the lies I've been telling today, try the .co.uk. In another week or two, it should go back to the .com. I'm having trouble with my hoster and server. It's a problem. The northblog.blogspot. There's an article. Where is it? Yeah. Edge magazine, a couple of years ago, did an article on basically why Angel of Darkness was such a rubbish game. And they asked me they interviewed me for that, and I gave them like an 8-page document on all my thoughts about it. And they quoted me quite extensively. But this is another good reason for having a project of your own, because while I was being interviewed, could we go to the next one, please? I think that's the one. Yeah, and the image. Yeah, there we are. It's that one there. I was being interviewed, and of course I got to plug Shadow Histories like mad. I was mentioning it all the time, and I didn't think I'd get away with it. And I even sent them some artwork from I've designed languages and symbol systems and sigil systems. And the guy was so interested in what I was doing, he actually gave me that page with some artwork on and mentioning Shadow Histories, which was like the best free plug. You'd have to pay thousands for publicity like that. So I got that free. So I could piggyback on somebody else's material. Can we just go back to the... There we are. So I'll just leave that one up. I apologise, I've taken 45 minutes, but are there any questions?
Oh, first of all, yeah.
Oh. I'm sorry.
Any questions? Yes.
You said you developed games about 6-7 years ago where the polygon count was a lot lower than it is today.
Yeah.
Would you say the games were a lot easier to develop back then, like with the lack of hardware?
No, games have always been difficult to develop. Whether you're a programmer or an ideas person, you're always struggling with the technology that you've got at the time. I still have a lot of friends in the computer games industry, and they say, and they've been in it as long as I have, longer in some cases, it never gets any easier because you've got other problems. What is easier is the thing you're specifically talking about, polygon count and memory. Yes, that's a lot higher now. So you can make a really nice spaceship or a nice animated figure, and it will run. When I was working on it, you'd build a level, which, let's imagine it was this whole college. You know, you'd build this hall, and you'd build the next room, and you'd build the entrance hall. But if I wanted to go and look at the polygon model of this hall, I would have to delete the rest of the college. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to rotate it around and have a look at it. And then you'd have to reattach it back on. And sometimes even cutting it down to that, it would break down. Now, it is a lot easier in terms of memory and polygon count. Yeah, it can work a lot better. But the challenge of producing the game, it's always a kick and scramble and a fight to get it out, always. So.
Which department would you say?
Sorry?
Which department would you say had the biggest task?
They're all the same. I mean, they're all completely different, but they're all equal value. You know, well, I'm biased, aren't I, for art and writing. If the story and the characters don't exist and the concepts, you've nothing to go on. If you haven't got the artists who can, really bring that vision to life, you've got nothing. If you haven't got the programmers, forget it. I mean, literally, forget it. They're all important. They all rely on each other. Unfortunately, what let Angel of Darkness down was that the PS2 was only the PS1 was out, the PS2 was coming out, and they'd only just got the development kit for the PS2. So the programmers had the double difficulty of trying to please the people who were creating the ideas and deal with this development kit for the PS2. They had a terrible job of it, and they didn't bring it off, unfortunately. It wasn't their fault. There was terribly bad management, but all the parts are all completely intermeshed. They're all as important as each other.
How much then of the platforms a factor then, considering the variety of them now?
Most of the games now, they have to be produced on multiple platforms, I guess. The way it's going now is going for multiplayer over the internet, and so, I mean, I don't play these things now. I'm really behind with all this. I'm about 5 years out of date. But I know that the games are... they're much more layered now. But the way I was talking to a colleague of mine in Bizarre Creations the other day, who incidentally she'd just been made redundant as the whole company is shutting down. It happens a lot in the games company. It happens all the time. She was saying that what's happening now is the computer games companies are panicking because the majority of sales are coming through second-hand games that you can buy in shops. The games companies are hardly making anything on it. They're looking to make everything downloadable in sections. You know, you buy the initial start package of the game, and then you do add-ons. And of course, everybody's used to getting free apps now, and nobody wants to pay anything for a game. I mean, you know, big boo-hoo for the games company. I couldn't care less personally. But what it does is, if the games companies don't exist, then the opportunities for working don't exist either. So for people like, I don't care, I'm never going to go back to it. But if you're interested in doing that, you know, it's like, it's a very precarious time at the moment. And either you've got to have a massive, massive corporation making massive games for millions of dollars, or you've got to have a small team of people making games, apps for mobile phones or whatever it is. It's either massive or small. There's nothing in between at the moment. And it doesn't look like it's going to change for a while. Nobody really knows what's going on. Any others?
Yeah, hi. If you had an idea for a game,
Yeah.
how much material and what material would you need in your package before you went to, say, a Sony?
Right. In my day, back in the day, like I say, I went with a colleague. We had a lot of artwork, we had music, and we had some descriptions of I haven't got it up there now, gameplay, what we thought the gameplay might be. We went with that, that was enough. They had enough then to see that it was something that they might be interested in, but it just didn't fit with their program of games they had bringing out. Today, I would say if you had some polygon figures of the characters or the concept of the environment, if you could build something in an environment or part of an environment or a car or whatever the game is, have some polygon models which are textured, coloured and lit, and you go with that and you go with a basic idea. If you can involve somebody who has got the gift of the gab, that's always a help, you know. Ally yourself to people. You can talk to people about getting a game together without giving away your ideas. You know, oh, what do you do? Oh, you know about programming. Well, if you're doing this, how would you get some ideas there? Get some documentation. You don't have to get loads of documentation. I know games that have gone ahead on the basis of one A4 page, a proposition. In fact, I didn't have a chance to put this on the... this might be something that anybody who's interested, perhaps they could get this from you at a later state. It's how to make a pitch. Where are we? I won't take a lot of time about this. Is that the pitch? Yeah. I've got a 2-page document here. It's no point me holding it up, you won't see it. But it's about what you need to do to make a pitch. So I can give you that. I could certainly come back and talk about what that means in more detail. But basically, I need a design document, some models if you can get it. And as I say before, the unique selling points. Why would anybody want to make this game? Why the hell would anybody want to buy this game? So, yeah, I didn't... No, but if you had storyboards that you could put in as well, that would help. I've not mentioned storyboards on this. Very important part of it. Hugely important part of it.
Animatic help?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But what they really want is they want to steal your idea. If you come up with an idea, they'll want to steal it. Or if you do what you need to do to protect it, they will, you know.
And what is that? Is that get an agent and copyright it?
There are various ways you can do it. Do it and make the document, get some dated documentation and keep it on one side. I'm talking really big stuff now. If you're going to do this really seriously, go to a solicitor and leave that documentation with them. I mean, then if a big computer game company does steal your idea, you're still going to take them to court and sue them, and they know you probably won't do that. But these are the steps. You have to take a chance. And if you've got a good idea, don't sit on it. Do something with it. Get it out there. I haven't really got the time to go in it in more detail now, but there are ways of doing this. And not everybody's interested in this. But yeah, there are ways. There are ways. And you can still get ripped off. Or you could be made a millionaire. Who knows? You know, it's the chance you take. So. And any more?
More questions?
We've got a little bit more
Yes.
time, I guess.
Do different departments get paid more than others?
In theory, no. In practice, yes. In theoretically, everybody's... testers get paid probably the least. They are considered... I mean, I don't agree with this. I think everybody's equally important, but testers are considered like the lowest part of the pyramid. What games companies are interested in doing is they're interested in getting young people coming in who are very, very keen and passionate, and they'll say, oh, we'll stick you in a room and you do this, and you basically, you're doing donkey work and they'll pay you peanuts.
Murti, I have to say, and I have to say it now, we actually have one of those people in this room. We have somebody who not only was a games tester for one of the James Bond games, which was credited.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Brilliant. Who's that?
Yeah, I think a round of applause
Who's that?
for Jack Sewell.
And how did that go? Was that a good experience for you?
I loved it.
You loved it? Brilliant. Brilliant. I saw you nodding or shaking your head in disagreement a couple of times, and I thought, he knows something.
When you said, like, testers get, like, paid the least, it's far too true. Far too true.
Right. Okay, so I'm wrong in that case.
No, it's true.
Oh, it's true. Sorry. I'm also a bit deaf.
I think, like, it is generally around the same for, like, people who do art, sound, and programming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they're all, like, in a general mix, and then the people higher up are obviously higher up, get more money.
Yeah. You should be out here giving the talk. I mean, I've never been a tester. You could, perhaps we could do that next time. We'll do a twosome.
Yeah.
Testing is a very good entry point. Did you find it easy to get the testing position? Were you?
Yeah, because my stepdad already worked there.
Right. Okay.
Because he worked for Bizarre, and he jumped ship
Yeah.
literally about 3 months before it went down.
Right. That's been my experience as well, and I still keep in touch. And I've got people I've worked with. Their sons and daughters are growing up now, and they're going into testing in that same way. So I keep my finger on it in that way, but I've never actually had to do it. You have. So would you go back to it?
Definitely.
You would. Great. See, there's passion. Can you hear that passion? Yeah, definitely. You need that. You've got to have that. You've got to have that for whatever you do, but yeah, definitely for games because it's a long haul. Any more?
Any more questions? Yes.
Yes, one last question.
Oh.
Do you find there's any bottlenecks in a company, like you're waiting on other departments to finish? You can do.
All the bloody time. Yes. Every day there are bottlenecks. Every day. It's called crisis management. It's like, oh, it's Monday morning. What's today's crisis that we've got to deal with? Tuesday. Oh, what's today's crisis? It's crisis management all the way. There are always bottlenecks. It varies. Sometimes, very often the bottleneck tends to happen around programming. That's quite common. It's not because the programmers are lazy or incompetent or anything like that. It's just simply that's where the bottleneck tends to happen. Bearing in mind that I'm still talking about my experience in games which stopped 5 years ago. It may have changed. I doubt it very much. In fact, I'd almost put money on it. But there are always bottlenecks. There are always problems.
And universities like Glyndŵr are offering courses, for example, the games development course at Glyndŵr is really giving the student the opportunity to become a manager, to manage by giving them little introductions to each
Brilliant.
other. So in fact, it isn't geared so much as being a programmer, it's geared towards managing a team.
Right, and that's crucial.
Right then, well, again, I'd just like to thank Murti for coming today.